This is the Crucible, the JRTC Experience.
Hey, click to my position over.
This is where we discuss warfighting skills and lessons learned in a decisive action training environment for large-scale combat operations at JRTC.
Welcome to the Large-Scale Combat Operations Symposium 2024, hosted by the Joint Readiness Training Center.
I really appreciate it, and really looking forward to the dialogue here across all warfighting functions. We've got experts across from JRTC and from Ops Group across the warfighting functions. I'm Brigadier General Jason Curl, the commander of JRTC in Fort Johnson, and Colonel Matt Hardman, the COG for the past 20-something rotations. So, and as I say, we've got experts here. So as you ask questions, we'll push it down to the experts in those fields, or just ask them directly, which is probably the better way to go. But the key is that we get a good dialogue across here, and that we continue to learn with our team, with experts from NTC, JMRC, MTCP, and all the centers of excellence on warfighting at the battalion, brigade, and division level. Hey, and also I want to open it up to Major General Gil Ferguson for any opening comments from your standpoint, sir. Okay, well, we're waiting on him.
Hey, and we'll get General Ferguson on in a minute, which is great. You know, we were really fortunate. So this is our second LSCO Symposium. We did one last year. It was a great event. And, you know, up front, we've got Intel, Maneuver, Medical, Space and Missile Defense, Centers of Excellence, Special Operations Center of Excellence, NCO Leadership Center of Excellence, Sustainment Center of Excellence, Combined Arms Center, Center for Law and Military Operations, Army War College, 1st Special Forces Command with General Ferguson, MCTP, CAC Special Operations Directorate, Australian friends on the net from CTC. Thanks for joining us. Israeli Ground Forces, the United Arab Emirates Land Forces, been a great partner here, multiple rotations. Jordanian Land Forces, also, you know, great partner. United Kingdom, look forward to seeing Tupera here next month. Mexican Army, look forward to having the Sedana Company here this coming month. Our great friends out at the National Training Center, United States Military Academy, TRADOC, and others. So for everybody on the net, thanks so much for joining us. And thanks for your time. And most importantly, I would say thanks for your commitment to the profession. You know, here at JRTC, we certainly don't think that we've cornered the market on good ideas or the answers by any means, but we are fortunate to get to talk and think about warfighting every single day. And, you know, one of the things I love about my job is I can come up on a pair of OCTs, and odds are they're not talking about the latest score, they're talking about warfighting. And I learned something here every single day, not only from my ops group teammates, but from Geronimo, and also from the our rotational unit teammates that come through here. And this last year has really been a year of tremendous change with the direction from the Chief of Staff of the Army with transformation. The changes that we've seen with the employment of EW, small UAS, sustainment, people and organizations adapting to R-Struck with reconnaissance and security, with sustainment, with C2, and in particular C2 Fix has been truly a breathtaking change. This is my 4th year of being involved with combat training centers, and I think this has been the year of greatest growth that I've seen. We were fortunate in the spring to get to do first ever Special Forces Group rotation with 7th Special Forces Group, the Red Empire. Amazing rotation, which really pushed the Operations Group to grow and change, particularly in the space and domain, as well as with Special Operations. And so our big hope out of this is not that you come away with all the answers. It's really that you come away with questions for each other, questions for us, and that the dialogue within our profession continues to grow. And that dialogue not only spurs change in our Army, but also spurs some of you out there to write great articles about the things that we're wrestling with in here. And some of the things that we're going to talk about within the themes of transformation, divisions as a principal tactical formation, the evolution of special operations forces, SBAPs, RSTRUC, incorporation of division functional brigades, the DVARDs, the MEBs, DSBs, CABs, C2 fix as well, and then some of the initiatives that Geronimo's had working with our teammates out there in the force, particularly the Ranger Regiment, 2nd Brigade of the 101st, who we'll have in rotation here this month, and others. And so really excited. And then on transformation, what I would say is I was a lieutenant in Alpha Company 1st to the 23rd, turned in my Bradleys after a rotation at National Training Center in 1999, and drew Lab 3, Canadian Lab 3s, as we figured out what was going to be an inter-brigade combat team that then became Striker Brigades. And from the top. So if you could check your mics, please. And what I would tell you is we have a tendency to be pretty critical of ourselves when it comes to change and transformation. And I actually think that's a sign of strength because what we do is incredibly important. And as professionals, we have incredibly high standards. And I think it's good and healthy that we challenge ourselves with how we're transforming. And that transformation is more than just equipment. It's how we organize, it's our concepts, it's our leadership, and how we develop people going forward. So really look forward to the dialogue today. Really look forward to all the great questions I know we're going to get and the great dialogue from our teammates up here. General Ferguson, sir, are you on the net?
I am, Matt. Jason, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, right on. Hey, look, thanks for having me. And I've had some conversations with both of y'all already, so you know that I could talk on this stuff for a long, long time, and I won't do that. I look forward to it. I think I'm only going to be able to be in this for about an hour. But first of all, I appreciate what y'all are doing. I appreciate you holding this symposium. The thing I will tell you, with respects to our formation and everything that we're getting to learn with y'all, the partnership we've had with the training centers really over the past 3 years, since we've really started to try to reinvest in what you guys offer there. I'm very thankful for everything y'all are doing. I'm thankful for the professionalism and the dedication you guys have. We talk to our formation all the time about the fact that we are in a period of generational change. I mean, we just are, right? Nobody knows what the next war is going to look like. We don't know where it's going to be. We don't know who it's going to be against. All we can do is prepare against the most lethal threats we have out on the battlefield today. And you guys are helping us do that. You already raised up you already brought up the JRTC rotation that 7th Group did. We're going to be up in DC next week talking to some senior Army leaders about what they learned out of that. And that's just the beginning. What we're trying to tell our formation, I think it's really this way across a lot of the Army, but, SOF, because of some of the longevity we have just with respect to NCOs on teams, we've got a lot of folks that went and fought in some pretty dangerous places, but they fought the same way for a long time. And that's not where we are anymore. And with all of the different technologies and capabilities that we're seeing proliferate across the battlefield, all of the work that our adversaries have done over the past 30, 40 years, frankly, to go to school on what makes us good at warfighting, and to try to build capabilities to counter what makes us good. All of that stuff, those are all things that are relatively new for our formation. It's definitely very new to deal with all of that at scale. And so we are continually trying to communicate to our formation that we're in a period of generational change. And going to the CTCs, it's an iterative process. We're not, there isn't a goal to, hey, we're going to win at the CTC every time starting in 2026. That if that's happening, then you guys aren't doing your job, right? I mean, and y'all know that already. I mean, your job is to make it harder and harder for us to win. That's what makes us better. It's the iron sharpening iron concept. And so I am personally and professionally grateful. Let me just put it that way. I'm personally and professionally grateful for what y'all are doing to allow us to figure out how we fight as a special operations formation, how we fight as part of the joint force. A big part of the message that we communicate all the time to our formation is we are enablers to the joint force. That's what we are. We are enablers to the joint force. And so I appreciate everything you're doing to help us figure out what that role is, what our role is as far as being enablers to the joint force. And then I'm professionally and personally grateful for what y'all are doing really for the Army writ large and the joint force writ large to make us all better. So I'll stop there. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for what you're doing, rotation after rotation, both at JRTC and then obviously out at MTC as well. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, sir.
Thanks, sir. And look forward to seeing you and some of your team down here in this rotation as we continue to evolve and grow. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like all the talent is to the left and right of us. And I'd like, if we start down here, Chief Rader, you'd introduce yourself.
Absolutely, sir. Team, good morning. I'm CW2 Jerrad Rader, call sign Fox 25. I'm the Brigade Targeting OC. I've been on the ground. I'm going on my 14th rotation, and I've done an additional 6 as part of rotational training units. My previous assignments, I was the Brigade Targeting Officers in 1st Brigade, 101st Airborne Division Air Assault, Bastogne, and as well as I served as the Effects Targeting Officer in 101st Departy.
All right, and before you go, I got to brag on you for a minute. I think Chief Rader is probably one of the learned so much from you about this, fire support, but also, selected to be a primary trainer at the Brigade Commander fight course that the Maneuver Center of Excellence runs. So phenomenal expert out there.
Everybody, my name is Captain here at the Joint Readiness Training Center. I have a current 20 rotations under my belt here over the last 2 years. I also have 2 as the RTU. My previous assignments, I was a FSC Commander OCT in Task Force 2. And then previous to that, I was in 3rd Brigade 10th Mountain. I did my KD time there with Hotel FSC 230 Infantry in 3rd Brigade 10th Mountain.
Team, First Sergeant Hamilton, I'm with Task Force 3, call sign Kilo 30 Alpha. I got roughly 10 rotations. My previous assignments I was First Sergeant 136 out of Fort Bliss, 1st Brigade, for about 2 years before moving to JRTC.
Good morning, team. Major Brandon Kilthau, call sign Geronimo 5. I'm currently the Geronimo XO, and I've spent the last year as the Geronimo 3 here. And I've got about 10 rotations under my belt. And then prior to that, I was at CGSC and then did my company command time at 214 Infantry, 2nd Brigade, 10th Mountain.
The Golden Dragons.
Dragons.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen, Major Ben Pinner. I currently serve as Oscar 3. Prior to this, I served as Zulu 3 and dual-hatted as Blackjack 3. So I played the Division 3 for 21st Airborne Division. And then prior to that, I served...
Hold on. You got to explain what Zulu 3 actually does.
So Zulu 3 works the plans, exercise, maneuver, control. And so we plan the scenarios and then we implement them. We have long-range planners do the Mr. Mark Miley. He works through the planning stages and all the IPCs. Then we do the handoff at the laydown to transition the rotation into the current operations, which is where I would take over as Zulu 3, and then coordinating all the Zulu staff, which replicates the 21st Airborne Division staff. So they dual hat both the job that they're doing in Zulu, planning future rotations, but then also that role as the division staff counterpart. And so when the brigade is in the box training, they can call up to what would be the Division 1 and talk to Major Barrero, and she would talk as if she was the Division 1 or the Division 4, because she dual has both those positions. But we have that counterpart all the way through the staff, so we can replicate really a division fight.
How many brigades does the 21st Airborne Division have?
Typically 4, sir. So 3 maneuver fighting brigades and 1 MEP doing rear area operations, at least as combat formation, sir. And then we also will have the cavalry to party, depending on the rotation.
Okay, awesome. Oh, you got to tell the rest of what you did before.
Oh, and prior to that, I was Geronimo 5 and Geronimo 3, so I got handed off to MAJ Kilthau over there, and this will be my 30th rotation.
30 rotations, awesome.
Sir, good morning. Good morning, gentlemen. Captain Sheena Henley, call sign is Alpha 90, currently served with BC2 as the BAO. This is about my 15th rotation, sir. I've been here officially 2 years this August, and I did 1 year as Alpha 30, the air assault team lead. I did my KD time, part of 210 Assault Helicopter Battalion, out of Fort Drum over there with 10th Mountain. So it was a good time. Yes, sir. Oh, that's sir.
Awesome.
Happy to hear.
Morning, team. Sergeant Major Chris Gaede. I just finished a wonderful 3 years. I had the privilege to serve as the Special Operations Training Detachment Sergeant Major. I've recently handed over to Sergeant Major Bob Lista, who's sitting here in the front row. This is my second assignment to JRTC, so I've got 58 rotations. 1 is RTU, and all my operational assignments were within SOC. We're in 10 Special Forces.
All right, 58 rotations. Now I feel like a rookie. Awesome, Sergeant Major. Okay, and I get the first question just to break the ice, and so, sir, it's coming to you. Previous commander of operations group, and then you got some rotations as a player between here in National Training Center and JMRC, which is impressive. But since and then you've been here as well as a senior mentor, serving as the DCGO for 10th Mountain Division, sir. So as you look at how we're training our Army for large-scale combat operations, what have you seen that's changed, and where do you see gaps as we continue to evolve to prepare our Army for large-scale combat, sir?
Thanks. So when I was here as the COG, I think one hole in our swing, significant hole in our swing that we've done a pretty good job of covering is we did a good job then of replicating the brigade fight, brigade and below, but we did a very bad job of replicating how it fit into the division fight. Even things like the construct was still much like how we were set up for the MREs for COIN deployments, in terms of the Aviation Task Force was still direct support to the brigade. The CSSB was still direct support to the brigade. So they came down here, and because there was no higher structure, they really worked for the brigade command, which was unrealistic in a LSCO fight. So if you've done any sort of war fight or anything like that, that's a whole separate fight that the brigade probably isn't gonna get access to, except at a rare occasion where they're the main effort for an air assault or something like that. So the having all the round out brigades, even some round out brigades who are actual brigades at home station, which is great training to them, being able to replicate the CAV, the DAVARDI, the DSB, so that we've got actual training audiences for the Aviation Task Force, for the CSSB, or the DSSB, for any of those sorts of things. I think that we've really improved. When I left here as the COG, two things that really made an impression on me that I wanted to fix in home station training in my next job were: one, comms training, because that became the root of all
The original set.
We couldn't synchronize fire and maneuver because we couldn't talk. We couldn't. Our logistics plans would fail to turn in our log stats or attend log sync because we couldn't talk. So now I think units do a little bit better job on that. But now we've got to be able to do that while hiding the electromagnetic spectrum. So how can we talk while hiding the electromagnetic spectrum? And then we've got to work on improving our ability to replicate the UAS and counter UAS fight. So we'll continue to work that over the next couple of weeks. And then security. For home station training, I think it's really important, when we do things like live fires, ranges, and we're in the field, so we're tactical, but we've got to be tactical. And we've got to teach soldiers that just because you're not doing actions on the objective in a live fire and you're back to the control base, you still have to full security. Because units would, at least then, would come rotation after rotation and air assault in or jump in. And after about an hour or two, no one would be full security. We end up casting this year.
So in the security, as you described, you talked earlier there about the USASOC. It's actually hard.
Right.
It's harder than in a coin environment because the enemy can sense you, affect you in way more ways and at greater distances than they ever could have in Afghanistan or Iraq.
Right. So how do you hide in both the visual, visually and the electromagnetic spectrum?
We've got to make security like breathing. Right. It just happens all the time.
But it starts with every time you're at Campbell and you're west of Market Garden, every time you're at Bragg and you're west of Liberty and you're west of Vancouver, every time you're at Fort Drum and you're north of Highway 26, you're full of security all the time. I think it's the only way to fix it. Absolutely. In all of those spectacles this year.
All right, and sir, so I'm going to transition because we got a great question that we got from Captain Connors. So shout out to Captain Connors at the Logistics Captain's Career Course. And so his question is, how can the Army effectively balance between preparing for high intensity operations and then low intensity operations with using LSCO scenarios? And how do we really balance as we prepare, for the contingency vote? So I got thoughts on that, but I can open it up. First, if I can open it up to you, sir, or I can open it up to, let's hear from any thoughts out there.
Sure, I'll take, I think on that one, it's starting with the worst case in mind. And so planning for the LSCO fight and doing combined arms maneuver, and then that'll transfer over to the low intensity fights. And so as we get the LSCO fight, we can do combined arms maneuver. We have the ever-present security. If we have a low intensity fight, we're just all the better suited for it. And so it's planning and preparing for the high game instead of the low game.
Yeah. What you got thoughts, Sergeant Major? I tend to, having 6 deployments, my experience, the kind of evolution of this by my 4th, I sort of realized that like the counter IED fight, if I was just doing combined arms maneuver, I was actually well postured to do it, right? And I think the fundamentals matter. Sorry.
No, I agree with what both the gentlemen said. Like if you can do the process to do the thing that's the hardest, doing the thing that's easier is just that much easier, especially when it's in an environment like a low intensity environment where you have more control and you own the environment a little bit more. I mean, if you have the SOPs and you have the knowledge and the know-how to do it in a LSCO scenario, anything you do in low intensity is just going to be that much.
Yeah, I think in the early 2000s we overreacted a little bit to how difficult it was to transform to a low intensity counterinsurgency fight, and I think it's more a matter of there's most dangerous, most likely course of action. Most dangerous is behind the large scale combat operations. Most likely, if you look at patch charts across the Army, still it's more of a low intensity type fight. But everyone needs to train for the high intensity fight and still have the mental flexibility, still do lower intensity fight.
That's true. So, what I come back to, the bedrock is really standards and discipline. And so the standards and the discipline required for large scale combat operations, frankly, in my opinion, is significantly higher because the margins are are that much tighter. And so people that are highly disciplined and have high standards, it's significantly easier to adapt to that environment if the threat is less kind of going forward. Okay, Captain Connors, great question, appreciate it.
All right, sorry, one more thing I said too. We also look at it a little too binary.
I think that's a great.
Because I think it's a continuum in all conflict. You got World War II on this end, and you've got some of the peacekeeping missions like Kosovo or some Sinai on this end, but everything else is somewhere in between. And I think no matter where we go, it'll be somewhere on that scale. So we really look at it as binary, and our actions have got to meet the threat. And often the ROE matches where what the threat is, both from a political standpoint and from an enemy standpoint. So we got to be able to go, not just look at it binary, but go somewhere on that.
And a sapper or infantryman from 1944 would have felt completely at home in an infantry squad fighting through Fallujah in 2004. That wasn't the larger conflict was clearly not LSCO, but at the squad platoon level, absolutely. I think this, and to your point, Sergeant Major, about process, if you follow process of IPO, Troop Leadership Procedures, MDMP, that process helps you calibrate to the problem that you're actually trying to solve. You were going to say something, Sergeant Major?
No, I was just going to say that your comment about how a World War II soldier would feel the same and you fit right in an infantry squad in Iraq.
In Fallujah.
In Fallujah.
2004.
That's a great mentality, I think, that all our service members should take into when they're planning for an operation. Because at the end of the day, at the squad level, I mean, we've all been there. A two-way range, it feels like war. And it can be the same, for you and your small element, the consequences, while not on a LSCO scale, they're still pretty relevant to you. So taking that mentality into everything we do, regardless of the environment, I think is really important.
Well, Sergeant Major, I get to then transition to ask you kind of the first question. So I got Sergeant First Class Hannafin in here.
Morning, sir. Sergeant First Class Hannafin.
Your door.
What are some of the RSOF lessons learned from CTCs over the last year, and particularly how does RSOF support joint force maneuver?
Okay. Well, we're going to come to you first.
Okay. Thanks, Swing. So we learned a lot of lessons over the last year, 18 months, but I think the big three takeaways, first off, is just the level of detail and planning required to kind of synchronize and converge all of SOF's effects to support the joint force. I don't think we really understood that until we did our first division in the dirt rotation at NCC. And then when we did our group rotation here several months ago. That really opened our eyes on what it actually takes for us running around, with our partner force in the deep to actually be value added and not a distraction, right? There's a fine line in there, like just running around behind enemy lines, wrecking shop has its time and its place. Wrecking shop.
That's it. Somewhere written in the manual, I'm sure.
That was kind of our guys, our RT's mentality. Yeah. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to wreck shop. I'm going to, draw as much combat power as I can away from, the joint force. And that's just going to have to kind of be it. But our eyes have been opened over the last year. But that might not be the right thing to do because it's got to be synchronized. So all our effects from all our capabilities are converging at one point to support, what the joint force actually needs at a particular time and place.
Can I dork out on that? I just got done reading the McManus trilogy on the U.S. Army in the Pacific, and the value of the equivalent of soft forces working with Filipino resistance, not wrecking shop behind enemy lines, but synchronized with that joint force and the ability to paint the intel picture was hugely impactful to that operation. You know, obviously Blisco, great historical example of SOF doing that incredibly well.
So we pulled some threads, like just that realization, that eye-opening at our level, has come with some key takeaways that started some discussions that I don't have the answer to, but it's ongoing. It's some stuff we're working with in our future scenario design. And one of them is location and roles of our headquarters. So can our headquarters actually do, particularly at the lower echelon, can they actually do that level of coordination? Or do we need to slice off, you know, some more fighting functions at this level and some at a higher level that has more capability to do that?
So really like getting detailed to define the fights at echelon.
Yes.
And then we're taking something away from a subordinate echelon. It's not
They
that
just
we
can't handle it.
It's not because they're dumb.
They're not equipped.
They're not equipped.
Yeah. So I think that's a big one. Then I'll breeze the rest. The other one is kind of like you have to have a shift. And it's getting there. A shift in our mentality of how we direct our maneuver elements, how we direct our ODAs. Like over the last 20 years, we've had, you know, in SOF mentality of push all the assets down, push everything down, push all the capability down to the lowest level, because that's the guy on the ground and that's the guy who has situational awareness. Stay out of his way and let him do his business. That worked for 20. I mean, that works when you own the sky and you're raiding a house, whatever. But that doesn't work in Blisco because when you're at that level and that denied of environment, you can't build the situational awareness to be able to actually make those decisions. So the guidance that comes from higher has to be more direct, more, you know, formal. I'm not going to use the micromanage word, but it might feel like that.
Yeah.
You know, like breaking through that mental barrier of how we direct our guys and make sure that their effects are actually synchronized, because I don't think they can. In some environments, I don't think they're going to be able to do that.
Well, and we're, you know, in the description I kind of heard, and one of the SOF leaders talked about this, it's actually doing people a favor.
Yes.
We're taking 100% problems away from them that we're going to solve at higher levels and let them hyper focus on the thing that only they can do.
Yeah, reduce the number of decisions that they have to make from a fighting.
So Mayor, I'm going to come back to you because I got the awesome quote from your AR, but I want to come over to Zulu 3. You know, your experience, you got to do this as Zulu 3 working with SF Group. What did you learn from that experience?
I think I was really kind of shocked on the Sergeant Major Gaede's point of the control required. And Joint Rhythm was very specific in their rotation. I learned a ton from him on that. It's like, don't become a strategic distraction. And so having the teams say, no, you're not going out there to cause chaos or wreck shop. You're going out there to provide a very specific purpose at a very specific time. And all the ATO doesn't support you, it's supporting the joint force. And so you might get some assets on the way back, but that's why you're getting the leftovers because we have a higher priority for those assets shaping the fight. And so I think that's really what I learned of. They have incredible capability. It just needs to be vectored in the right way. And all that takes coordination and a lot of detailed planning at higher echelons in order to do that sort of thing.
Okay. You know, that's a great comment for the conventional fight too. Because I think in terms of how we've made it a little bit more vision focused instead of just DCT focused. Not in the consternation of why aren't we getting all of these assets because of the higher mission, and there should be shaping that's done for you, but also
Chief Rader is nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I love it, sir. When we talk ATO and anything like that, I love it, sir. So Major General Ferguson mentioned when he said enabling the joint force, obviously Sergeant Major said it. I'm in level of details to support the joint force. When we're talking the ATO and how we can get soft integration into that, part of the joint targeting cycle, one of the outputs is the Air Operations Directive, or AOD, which is going to outline operational objectives, tactical tasks, and tactical objectives. When our soft partners are out there focusing on those very specific tactical tasks that achieve our operational objectives, that's how they're going to get support from the JFAC and CAS platforms. So being able to nest our soft partners to execute that's how they're going to see that support.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
Sorry, just got one more thing on that, Chief. Like, and it goes back to what our CG said. Like, getting in that mentality, we see it routinely with some of our RTUs, is understanding that, hey, we are a supported element, right? So we should not be requesting assets for what we want to do. Right. We should be requesting assets for what, you know, the joint force needs to do.
And Sergeant Major, I gotta ask, you know, because I listened to this in your AR and it like ended up in my green book. So what one manual would solve most of our problems at the AOB level?
So so what we see out there in the box from our maneuver formations, and we tell every ODA, we tell every team starts with this: 99% of your problems can be solved with the Ranger Handbook. It's nothing new. It's nothing crazy. It's if you follow the Ranger Handbook, sprinkle in a little Digital Force Pro and an understanding of your EW environment, you will be fine. Like 99% of your problems will not be self-induced. And I mean, that's just the simple truth from what we see.
Yeah, I think you can say that about the whole Army. Yeah, the whole Army in general, at the platoon at the low level.
You know, in that vein, units that rehearse how they occupy tactical assembly areas, how they occupy patrol bases, and they have an actual SOP and they have the detail of where people go, what they do. They buy themselves back hours and hours of their lives. Into General Curl's earlier comment, their security then is real, and they don't get disrupted by Geronimo lurking in the dark. So since I spoke about, you know, I got Lieutenant Harrington in the room. Sir. All right. So the first question before you get asked your question is, why is Geronimo cheat?
We don't cheat, sir.
Great answer. All right. Why is Geronimo able to do what they do?
Use bind arms maneuver to defeat the RT forces, sir.
And you get to do it every single month, right? So that's the secret sauce right there. Okay, now you get to ask your question. Now that I put you on the spot.
Major Kilthau, sir. From an enemy perspective, how is the Army doing in transforming main command posts from large point-centric CPs to more tactical and mobile CPs? What makes the CP hard to find and kill?
Yeah, I think over my last year here as the S3, I've definitely seen this as an area that RTU has leaned into heavy. When I first got here, we were already starting to make some of the transitions, but we were still seeing some of the tents, the generators, the antenna farms, and even some of the electromagnetic signatures that we could speak with confidently and certainty that, okay, that's a battalion or brigade MCP. And that has gone away dramatically. And I think that really what we're seeing is transitions into smaller CPs that can in place in terrain where it's harder to find them. So it goes back to the camouflage and dispersion. And they're also faster to break down and move. And then it also puts us from a targeting perspective on the horns of dilemma, which is I'm looking at 2 to 3 vehicles, and I'm just not sure that that's going to be worth the value to risk proposition of unmasking assets to strike. And then what CP is it? Is it a maneuver CP? Is it a support CP? Are we going to get the effects that we want for the assets that we're unmasking? And I think the rotational units that have come through here, it's been, while wearing this uniform, great to see. But when I put on the green Geronimo uniform is definitely frustrating, and it's hard to find them.
Okay. Hey, and so we're ready to take live questions. You got it. We got some more questions in the room, but hopefully we have the technology to be agile enough. So if you've got a question, ask it. I'm gonna ask a couple more in the room, and we can keep coming to it. Any other comments before I ask another question on CPs and what we've seen with command posts?
So the only thing I'll add is back to the Ranger handbook discussion that we had, our CP's easy away, provides, wanted away from key terrain, avenues of approach. And then just having, it's great when we have an officer major or non-commissioned officers that run the quartering party. When the brigade command post comes in, it makes it faster and more rapid to set up. When there's an SOP, it's rehearsed. Quartering party receives, the first echelon goes to the right, the next to the left. You establish this first, and having an SOP of how we set up and tear down just makes us that much more survivable, sir.
So, I mean, transitioning a command post in the dark for the first time is kind of like taking a belt sander to the bottom of your feet, like not a fun experience. But like practice rehearsal, that's what I've seen here in 24 plus months. Yeah, I've actually been amazed. I mean, we've seen a battalion tear down and transition in 6 minutes. And that's going to survive. That's going to survive on any battlefield over time. And I think it's more than just the individual. I mean, as you were describing it, when everybody's doing that, what we're really doing is we're giving the enemy multiple problems to have to solve. Any other comments on command posts?
I think one of the other things we see is when units have the SOP for how they transition from CP to TAC and then back, they end up doing a lot better because they can make that quick transition, but they never lose comms. And so then the original sim, they're able to keep communicating, keep fighting as they're doing it.
Okay, Staff Sergeant Messerschmidt.
Sure. Captain Lipe, how are base clusters improving DSA survivability, and what are some good TTPs from units who successfully implemented this method?
Yeah, so we have been seeing a lot of base clusters throughout the rotations during my tenure here. What's improving their survivability is the dispersion that Geronimo 5 has mentioned. They're camouflaging, they're getting off of the roads, and then when they're
Chad, what are roads?
Lava, sir.
Roads are lava.
Roads are lava. Stay away from them. Get off the main MSRs and ASRs. And then when we're looking at that concept of the base cluster versus the traditional style, we need to think through, who are we putting within those base clusters? How are we arraying forces? How are we aligning, C2 capability, both personnel and communications platforms? How are we going to actually communicate between those nodes? How are we going to synchronize sustainment for the brigade in order to enable the brigade to do what it is that they need to do to support the division? Some of the good TTPs that we have seen units implement is one is having that SOP that Chief Rader and everything's been discussed is having a packing list, validating that packing list to include load plans for vehicles and validating that load plan. And then and it's like you put what's in your rucksack that's based off of the packing list. You add you load your vehicles with what is validated already, and that's implemented into the SOP. And then also when we're looking at that, it's like making sure every single person knows what it is that they need to do once they get on ground. And we're going through those rehearsals because that's going to build the standards and discipline that we need in order to achieve that. Because as a sustainment package, we've gotten used to being a bigger element. We need to get out of that mindset and get into a combat mindset of how fast can we do this and how proficient can we do this so that we can keep enabling the brigade to do their mission.
Okay. Any other comments on base clusters that y'all seen? I got comments. What about from a Geronimo perspective?
Yeah, so I would say just like the CPs from Geronimo's perspective, it makes targeting difficult.
I mean, it used to be like Geronimo, like if you had a great rotation, your reward was you get to attack the BSA. Like the best platoon got to attack the BSA next rotation.
And now it's getting harder to find them and back to the security, harder to attack them.
Yeah.
So it's when you've got those large logistical packages, that's worth it every day of the week for us to unmass assets or personnel.
Get a biscuit out to stop up the sadness.
Absolutely, sir. It's a good experience, and we're just having less and less of those fun experiences as we're growing.
Anybody, what are some of the kind of remaining challenges?
Some of the remaining challenges with the transition, sir. Yeah. So still the log-stat reporting, communicating and synchronizing that with the brigade, because it's not just at the BSB level, but it's at echelon, right? Starting from that platoon level, going up to the company, and then understanding what the battalion needs, and then making sure that that is communicated at echelons so that we can put in that lockstep request, because, you know, the CSSB or the DSSB has to prepackage those, and that takes time. So understanding how long that physically takes, and understanding that you have to be disciplined with your reporting requirements that you need to facilitate your mission.
Yeah, two that stand out to me is, I mean, I think it was a real challenge, the C2 for a BSB, and then with, forward support companies as part of it. I do think that's a challenge, and it's been really awesome to get to watch commanders and their sergeant majors like wrestle with how to solve that problem, and folks approach it in different ways. I've got Lima 6, former BSB commander. Do you have thoughts on that? Like,
yes, sir. I think Chad hit it on the head. The leadership piece is huge. You got to fight the urge to put a little task force hat on top of that cluster and just keep it a pure single line company headquarters, or keep it that 3 dots platoon, because it's going to work a lot better. 2 is the comms piece, to your point, sir. Like, if you have 7 clusters and one's on MUOS, one's on TAC, 2 are on FM, one's on JVCP, you're destined to fail. So rehearsals and pace plans and ensuring.
Right. So the pace is not a menu?
No, sir.
Right. Because I think, that's to your point. Like, we've got to be disciplined about, if this is how we're communicating, everybody's got to be disciplined about communicating the way that we prescribe from higher.
So I think also infantry field grades, artillery field grades need to spend some time at home station in BS, like when they do BSA trainings, not just the FSC commanders, to really understand like where the stuff's coming from and like how to get it, how to like what they actually need in terms of reports.
It doesn't come from FedEx, sir?
It doesn't just come from FedEx,
right? Yes, sir. So my advice at home station is, I think, rock drilling this like early in the training cycle, so people can understand and visualize how this operates at scale. It's different than the TMP bringing muffins to the range, as one of the sergeant majors that came through here kind of pointed out. How do we rep this out first on a terrain model, then maybe terrain exercise without troops, and then at full scale as part of our home station training?
I mean, even if it's just, when the BSB does their BSA training, like just get them out there and just see how, like, where everything is and how it all works and how the flow of information through the SPO and how he's doing his rack stacking the commodity and all that stuff.
Because, not only do those people get to sustain us, they get to do security,
right?
They get to do maintenance on their vehicles. And then there's time to do troop leadership procedures, plan pre-combat inspections and pre-combat checks and rehearsals to execute that tactical mission, like, to a high standard. And that requires, I think, to your point, sir, like, it's a lot of synchronization right back there. Any other comments on base clusters? So what I would, if you're out in the audience, in the interwebs listening, feel free to reach out to Lima team. We've got some products. We've now seen probably the last 16 rotations have been base clusters. So there's some folks that are doing amazing stuff out there. This has probably been one of my biggest surprises, how quickly the Army has gotten better at this. Okay, we're going to transition on. So waiting for any questions from the outstations. But in the interim, we'll go to Staff Sergeant Wyatt.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My question was, are we achieving a combat mindset?
Hey, sorry. So first, Sergeant Hamilton, I'll answer that question. I think we're achieving a combat mindset by having high standards and discipline. Through high standards, such as maintenance, if you have a standardized maintenance on your equipment, preparing for combat for tomorrow's fight, that equipment's going to be ready for that fight. So instilling that combat mindset is every single day. Waking up, doing disciplined PT to prepare you for tomorrow's fight is having that combat mindset. But high standards and high discipline is that we can drive that combat mindset daily to the soldiers. Do you have a second part of that question?
I can follow up. First, how are we instilling standards and discipline in those formations, and what can they do to excel in a blissful environment?
Roger. The way that I'm seeing that it gets instilled in those formations is inspections and rehearsals. The units that do inspections daily, routinely, those soldiers are ready for tomorrow's fight, are ready for the next fight. Their equipment's ready. They have what they need to fight. They're ready to roll. Rehearsals is driving them to understand what they're doing in the next fight. If something goes wrong, if there's a CASEVAC, if they understand in the PACE plan, if it's not working, where to go, understanding what they need to do through rehearsal. They have to obsess over rehearsals to instill that. Does that answer your question?
Hey, from a Geronimo perspective, I'll go to Oscar 3 or Geronimo 5. What have you seen? What's your perception of units? I mean, discerning. We're not going to talk about any specific unit here unless it's positive. But how do you determine whether a formation is an easy target or a hard target?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to we can tell pretty quickly where we've got engaged leaders, when we've got highly motivated soldiers that are just, I know it's a cliche, but doing the small things right.
Like what kind of small things?
It's camouflaging vehicles, camouflaging yourself, wearing the right equipment, having the right equipment. There's been a lot of times where we've gone on to an objective that really could have gone another way if they had the right equipment at the right places and the knowledge to put it in action. So I think it's some of that. It goes back to the security when we're doing our dismounted infiltrations, our patrols. Are we walking into patrol bases at night, or are there soldiers that are up pulling security, doing the challenge and password? And it's just a little things.
How early in a rotation can you tell how this is?
Yeah, sir. I think it really is. It's a matter of hours. They get stressed at the joint forcible entry level, and is getting into the AO the mission, or is getting into the AO putting your weapon into service, pulling security, going to those intermediate objectives, the mission. We really see it in a couple of.
I could add on that one. I remember one experience when I was over in Geronimo. It's right after the JFB, and it seemed like the unit that I was encountering did the collective.
Yes.
And
the rucksack flop?
Yes, sir. They did. And then a small other than I, we came up to a more firing point, and we were able to take out the entire more firing point because they did that rucksack flop. They're like, hey, we made it. Gun through us. Then they went out. Yeah. But then other units, you get up and as soon as you're coming in, you're hearing on that side, they're talking, they're communicating, they start shooting at you. You're like, okay, I don't want to touch that. And you leave.
When I was the COG, our ops group sergeant major had a analogy he used to always give that he said he walked up on a patrol and they'd been there for no one had dug in. He said, why hasn't anyone dug in? Well, sir, we're trying to figure out, we haven't been here that long. How long have you been here? 4 hours. He said, if you've been there 20 minutes, you start digging in. He said, if you ever look at an anthill and you pick over an anthill, they'll displace and they'll immediately start digging because their survival depends on it. Did you have a comment?
Not from this group.
Sorry.
No, I just echo what everybody's saying. It's the small things, and then it's the CTC environment that excuse me, that they'll learn real quick.
It's like dodgeball. It doesn't build character, it reveals it.
You're gonna learn. It can literally be the difference between does the PL do the Ranger School thing with red lens flashlight under a poncho, or does he stand up and just do it next to a road? Those small things in this environment can have massive consequences. So, and sometimes it just takes discovery learning.
So I got a good news story, right? So RSY back brief, National Guard Battalion, Master Sergeant, waiting to be frocked, had just been put in as the Command Sergeant Major. And, he went to Oscar 9 and was like, I'm trying to figure this out and I need advice. And so Sergeant Major was like, hey, you should do an inspection. You should inspect leaders. And so we did a battalion formation, and this would have been RSY 5, in-range inspection of that entire battalion, training certified leaders on inspection. Hands down, lowest X-row, violate a noticeable difference comparative in terms of performance and safety in that rotation, and all because, you know, a leader was humble enough to ask the question and then do something kind of with that advice.
Well, that was part of my question about how early in a rotation you felt standards of discipline. I would venture to say it's probably a way towards the 50. It's certainly.
Okay. Drew, if you got questions, drop them in the chat there. All right. Hey, next question, Captain Nelson.
Yes, sir. This question's for Chief Rader. So in large-scale combat operations, what steps can brigades take to enhance the effectiveness of their targeting process?
Yes, sir. So what I would offer is I would offer three things. The first of which being just discipline. It seems silly, but discipline will improve it incrementally. And not necessarily as it pertains to just the targeting process, but as it pertains to P2, C2WGs and the operations process holistically. If we just come disciplined with the appropriate inputs, we'll be significantly more prepared. There's often a fallacy of a time-constrained environment where we just don't have enough time, when really a lot of it just comes down to ill-preparedness. So we're having to do things over and over. An example of that I would give with that, not necessarily something that maybe I have or have not seen, just an example, like when S2 would come without an event temp or MAKU. As disciplined leaders, we should let that S2 representative brief the rest of the staff in this B2 CTWG without the requisite information to really facilitate that. So the first just being disciplined. The second what I would offer is that in the targeting process of the brigade, we have to focus on solving the brigade's problems with the task organization that we've been assigned. We can't always be reaching out to higher. Division did MDMP, they assess relative combat power, assess option, or they assess relative combat power, generate options, and array forces. When they did so, they task organized the brigade to accomplish its mission inside its area of operation. We're incrementally faster, and we can change to the operational environment quicker and the variables if we do it organically and not rely on division or potentially even the Air Force to support us. And the last thing I would offer is that we have to divest ourselves from the ATO, specifically as it pertains to those 24-hour time horizons. The targeting process within the brigade needs to happen faster, once, like I mentioned, to change the operational environment. And one way to do that is to divest ourselves from the ATO and not focus on specifically talking at 24 and 48. It's okay to talk the current day when we're trying to synchronize effects in support of the brigade. And Major Kilthau, if I could pass this to you, when we talk how Geronimo does it and talks the current day, the speed at which you guys do it is significantly faster than what some of the rotations that I've seen. So if I could pass it to you to how you guys conduct this, sir.
Yeah, Chief, exactly what you were talking about is Geronimo 6 is implemented this. We come out of the Cub and go right into our targeting working group. And it's about coming prepared with some of the stuff that you're talking about. So it's the two with the event temp, with the MAKU, with the ICSM. It's having our targeting cop, and then it's understanding the commander's intent going into that. And then also what assets we have available. So we go into that. It doesn't take us a ton of time, but we're validating or making changes to the HPITL. And then all of those get generated quickly to Frago that's going down to the company, down to our scouts that have the assets to prosecute those targets. And they're saying, hey, if you see this, like, destroy it. So that gets out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the speed at which y'all are able to operate, you have very detailed SOPs.
Yes, sir.
Right, and then the guidance, the use of graphic control measures. There's a ton of control built in left of execution through SOPs, through graphic control measures, through engagement, disengagement criteria, PIR that's actually tied to decisions, FFIR that's actually tied to decisions.
Yes, sir.
And that's part of what allows you all to be, frankly, at speed of water.
So I'd love to add on to the control piece for sure. When we're talking a permissive environment for fires is obviously what it is that we're trying to create. There are only 4 permissive fire support coordination measures. You could argue of which maybe only the brigade establishes 2 of those. So when we're creating this permissive environment, it's through the addition of airspace coordination measures and then maneuver control measures. And then, well, it's just the control piece as it pertains to the command and control system as a whole, the peoples, the processes, the networks, and then the command posts. if we have control across all of those, that's what's going to create that permissive environment and lets us react to as it changed and to the variables that will never remain constant. Examples with that being from the people perspective, if the commander's outside of the command post, do we have an authorities matrix that allows the XO or the S3 to change rapidly? Do we have the processes, our operations process? Are we doing the NDMP with the right things? Do we have the networks necessary to facilitate digital fires? And then obviously our command post that feeds that whole loop back to the decision maker there in the box.
I would also venture to say to create a permissive fires environment, especially when comms are unreliable and everyone's really tired. Another critical thing is having really detailed three-dimensional graphics to know where everyone is. I think a lot of times units are afraid to be very prescriptive and tell everyone where the BSA needs to be, where the PAAs need to be, where a unit need to be at a certain time. But by being very prescriptive, we can create a lot more of a permissive fires environment.
Yes, sir.
Sure. I'm actually going to pass it back to Chief Rader because I learned a lot from Chief Rader as we were looking at the division construct and where we put CFLs, IHL.
Hold on. Raise your hand if you learned a lot from Chief Rader. Right. Okay.
But Chief, if you wouldn't mind going and talk to what we've seen, especially when we pulled back the shadows, what we had to do with IHL, CFL, and Foundry.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we looked at here is it's the delineation of targeting efforts at echelon. A lot of times we see organizations that come through that think that the coordinated fire line is that delineation, and that's not it. So when we pulled it back, identifying that it's the brigade forward boundarying. One of the things that does here at the CTCs is allow conversations between commander to commander dialogue as we act in this LISCO environment where the brigade commander can have conversations with the division commander and understand, is the brigade forward boundary potentially too far? Is it too short? Do I have the task organization needed to accomplish my mission? And those are some of the things that we looked at, where maybe sometimes it's misunderstood that the CFL or the IHL would be that delineation. It's not. It's your brigade forward boundary.
Yeah, I could go off on the control part. I think the thing with control, and I didn't get this as a company commander. I would argue I probably didn't really fully get it as a battalion commander. I think it was my experience after, National Training Center, and I try to be super transparent. I came through here in 2016, did not get a single round of artillery in the fight as a battalion commander. Super frustrating. Led with my chin the whole time. I got to the National Training Center and my third rotation in, I realized the problem had been me. And because I didn't understand the control that was required at the battalion and the brigade level for this, sort of your comment about graphic control measures and or pace, that I had to be on the pace that the brigade had set, digital fires, the speed at which and the efficiency at which we can do that. It really kind of changed the way I thought. What I found was actually what the control did, the ability to control as many variables left of execution gave me more freedom of action and my subordinates more freedom of action in execution because things were defined clearly. I know who's on my left, who's on my right, who's behind me. I know where I can fly a UAS because I own this amount of ground up to this altitude. And as long as it's not within one of these airspace control measures, I have the freedom to operate and act in there. No need to clear ground if the Charlie Company commander is the one calling for fire in Charlie Company's area of operations. No reason to clear air if it's outside of one of the airspace control measures that's been established. And so all of that, once I understood the science of this more, one, it was humbling. And two, it helped me, I think, grow and be more effective with what we're doing. Okay, I got a question here from the Army Sustainment University. And so either drop a chat or raise your hand and we'll get you on voice if you're having trouble chatting. But I got one from Army Sustainment University. And I love this one because I think this is this is one of the real differences from maybe what many of us have experienced in the last 20 years is, what are the challenges for logistics and sustainment in large scale combat operations? And then obviously, you know, what are some of the best practices or innovations to overcome some of that? So Captain Lipe, we'll start with you, but I think there's, you know, a lot of ground here for everybody across warfighting functions.
Yes, sir. So some of the significant challenges that the sustainment community has had, you know, going through this transition into LSCO was getting rid of that traditional style BSA, moving into the base clusters. We're understanding that is helping us improve survivability rates, but then also too is the communication that we've already touched on, the communications that we physically have, and what Brigade or our higher echelon has put on us, and understanding that we are getting those systems up and running in an operation so that we can, receive the proper reports that we need in order to get all the commodities that we need, and then also to synchronize that with the brigade. You know, talking through fires. You know, are we communicating? Are we having LNOs at the right echelons? You know, from the fire perspective, from the aviation, back at the CSSB, DSSB, so that we can synchronize everything that is needed in order to achieve what it is that the brigade has been set forth to do. Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, absolutely. From the class 5 big bullets perspective, we have to create shared understanding and common language with the use of combat configure load SOPs or CCL SOPs. And what that looks like is simply terminology: provide me CCL 1 defense. And that is a specific number of fast cam rounds with the associated fuse, the propellants, and the primers. That way we get a complete round when it lands on the ground. And then we don't have confusions in the BSA with logisticians.
We're not having to do math when we're really tired and under high stress.
It's shared understanding with logisticians. Are we talking NODIC? Are we talking nomenclature?
Yeah.
If there's just one word, I need CCL2, and that's, like I said, a prescribed number. It just creates that shared understanding. And then as we're doing the analysis in the brigade, as it pertains to like our targeting process, our fire support planning, and then our counterfire analysis, we have the ability to then project and use very common language to get rounds required.
What have you seen in terms of best practices for who from the fires community should be in the BSA or ammo?
Yes, sir. The battalion master gunner, I've seen that as an individual that's as a 13 Bravo. They understand nomenclature. They understand the difference between a 7.62 or a 7.67, sir. Just someone that is obviously competent on shelf use combinations would be the answer, sir.
Sure. I was going to add on to that one, at least from the division perspective. One of the things we've seen, particularly related to fires, but asset visibility. And it goes back, sir, to your original comment about the original sin of communication. So do the units know what they have on ground and where it is? So we've seen units that go through and they didn't have good asset visibility and they're ready to shoot fast cam for the defense, and they had the wrong fuses because they didn't have the CCL correctly. But then other units, when they've done the detailed, the conceptual to detailed planning, they've war gamed it, they've rehearsed it. They have all those things at the right place at the right time so they can actually execute on them.
Yeah, as a guy that was taking a note card in my rotation as a brigade commander, trying to figure out where all the mortar ammunition was that had been issued from the division to us, had almost 2 combat loads of mortar ammunition. I mean, this asset visibility is huge. So yeah, I used to right here.
I used to always joke, kind of joking, kind of not, that the FSO and SPO have got to be best friends. Like you got to be like hang out on the weekends, go to each other's kids' birthday parties, because they've got to have a constant hotline together.
When we are doing this at exceedingly high standard, fire support really should be first and foremost a sustainment challenge, not an employment challenge. To your point of like, this is why this boat, we're really doing this well. It's really figuring out what the controlled supply rate is across the theater, how we're going to manage that, not just right now, but days ahead, which gets to, okay, you're like wanting to talk, keep going.
But yeah, and then looking at the RSR, what is required, and then does it exceed our CSR or not? And then looking through that, and then getting with the subject matter expert on the ammunition, saying, hey, I may not have that round, but can I supplement that with and still achieve the same flags?
And then scaling this to the DSB, the Division Support Brigade, and how we kind of solve the math problem, not today, but over days of as we transition types of operations as well. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then an aviation piece to tie in directly what Captain Lipe brought is having the right people in the right position, sir, at that higher echelon, having a subject matter expert. What I see in a friction point that happens is they want to send a junior aviator up to a brigade level position who can't talk effectively on what the needs of the aviation brigade is. It's a far support to that. So it ends up turning into a reactionary problem of sustainment instead of proactive. So if you have somebody that can talk aviation assets effectively to the brigade commander and can level the communication bubble, QCing these TMRs and AMRs for resupply, you can get ahead of that problem, sir. And I've seen the difference in rotations that come through. They'll send a junior aviator because they don't want to lose their experience on the training level instead of sending that subject matter expert who can talk to the brigade commander and get ahead of these, tie in with fires effectively and tie in with BSA.
A timeless lesson is if the LNO you sent didn't hurt, it probably wasn't the right LNO. Hey, we're going to come back around to the sustainment one, but we've got two questions from outstations, and we're going to come back to this thing because I think this one's huge. CW5 Harris, Chief.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am with the Army Petroleum Center. So my focus is petroleum and bulk water. And this is kind of over a question more on sustainment side. What do you see when it comes to units being able to conduct water purification out there? And is there a gap if they do that in moving the bulk water to the units that require it? Or are folks bringing in bottled water and going out of the box to pick up water at a water point and then bringing it back into the box? Or are they able to purify it and self-sustain and move that bulk water out there?
Great question. First off, thanks for the great question.
Great question, Chief. Yeah, so the brigade, employs their bulk water assets, and they do have, well, each unit should have their purification test sets, and I'll sort of kick it over to Master Sergeant Robinson on the medical side for the preventive med portion to sort of cover that piece here in a second. But yeah, so we are physically using our bulk water assets inside the training area, and we're having to echelon that through from the BSBs down to the FSCs and then down to the respective company trains, and then working through that problem set of how are we getting that bulk water into the canteen and making sure that it is sanitary and purified. Master Robinson.
Before you turn over, Master Sergeant, to specific your question, not every rotation is coming with a ROCU unit as part of the troop list or troop list exception. And so when they're not, obviously, we're doing that constructively from bulk water sources out of the training area, flowed from the division bulk water, the CSSB through the BSB, and then down trace. And there's a great conversation to have about water from bulk water really to the end user. What I have seen with the rope units that come here, some of the most ideologically committed soldiers I've seen, like pretty phenomenal performance. When we have rope units here, they perform exceedingly well. So that's been my experience with them. Master Sergeant Robinson, I'll push over to you.
Yeah, great question, Chief. I think the bulk of your question has already been answered, but for the water purification from a medical standpoint,
I guess users' preference.
at the brigade level,
so if like
we understand
have like a shortage,
that med officers,
then we can say, hey, you have to give your token up before you leave to the person coming into your position.
Hey, whoever's talking about your giving up your token, you're hot micing.
Yeah, I think at the brigade level, we understand that the preventive med officer is a brigade asset, but oftentimes turns into a division asset just based on the fight. But so far, 7 rotations in for me, I haven't seen a major issue getting down to the user level with needing tablets or testing kits. Most of the time, the RTU does a pretty good job of preparing for that before they come to these rotations.
And we're not using bottled water here. That's not how we do business here, and to my knowledge, not at the National Training Center either. Certainly didn't see it when I was out there. Okay, Mr. Bowen from the
the Army Medical Center of Excellence. Awesome having you on the net. Sir, your question?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Dwayne Bone here, Medco. And I think we may have two folks in the room with you. I'm not positive right now. But one question for things that we're looking at is how can we increase?
They're here.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Okay, how can we increase the coordination and training between maneuver, medical, and sustainment staffs during the CTC rotation to enhance combat effectiveness? And that we understand the need to train fires personnel, but are we creating unrealistic expectations that casualties and DNBIs will not exist? And therefore you will be able to fully employ, your entire force when in fact we know that that force will be reduced. Thank you.
Hey, great question. So I think the first thing is we're really fortunate here at JRTC because one of my neighbors on the street is a 32nd Hospital commander, and they've deployed a ton to OIR. But the other thing that the 32nd Hospital has done is they've established Role 3 for 2 rotations since I've been here, and they generally average once a year, depending on their deployment cycle. To where they'll set up the Role 3 at doctrinal distance away from AO Bear where we're fighting, and we'll work the casualty flow all the way from point of injury back to Role 3. And so I think it's awesome when we have the opportunity to do that live. When we're not doing it live, we do it constructive. To your point about casualties, I'm going to turn. I've got an opinion, but I would kind of want to turn to others to kind of answer your question. Sergeant Major, any thoughts from seeing this with the soft rotations?
So from the soft rotation, or just in general, the way our forces are employed, casualties are they're kind of handled in a different way. We're because we're generally farther forward. So the first problem is even getting them out if we can. So we've invested quite a bit. Our formation has over the last 10 years in what we call prolonged field care. Our guys be able to maintain a casualty for days on end if necessary. But then it's for us to work through our partner force to get that casualty back to a higher level of U.S. or host nation care.
Okay.
Yeah, sir. Also, as we're doing it, as you mentioned, the constructive side, one of the things we'll do, particularly after JFE, is we'll work with RTU on the backhaul of casualties. And so we'll actually get them to the Role 2, back on if the G-locks aren't open, back on aircraft, either rotary or fixed wing, back to the Role 3, even if the Role 3 is constructive. And so even if we don't get perhaps a volume we might see, we're still working the training objectives so the units get that repetition of doing it live.
Yes, sir. And then, so what I've seen from an aviation standpoint, sir, is it is night and day. Back to my point of having the right people in the right spot. Do we talk about this at the right time in a rehearsal situation? So a lot of times I'll see units that don't even bring up the CASVAC backhaul until the very end, like the air mission brief right before execution, when it's something that should be talked about in our contingencies during the air mission coordination meetings. That we do execute. And again, that's having that right subject matter expert there, following doctrine and our checklist of what do we talk about when we have all the right decision makers in the room at these planning events. And it is night and day when you have the right people there that talk about this contingency at the right point in the planning process, so they can deliver that back to your company, battalion mission wants to rehearse that and get that information to yourself. I think it's just allowing time for rehearsals and having that right discussion with you.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Here's what I would add. So, from a scenario perspective, we clearly balance, training objectives, right? So we always are going to exercise those processes and systems. The volume, we're going to balance out with training objectives of the unit. So 400 casualties, we're probably actually not going to backhaul all 400 casualties, in part to continue to meet other training objectives. We will backhaul a proportion of those casualties to keep that system constantly working all the way through Role 3. And there's times and places based on training objectives and what we're doing where we will backhaul 400 casualties. If it supports and is balanced with the other training objectives. To your question about staffs and staff coordination, you know, it's just my perspective. I think the senior leaders that I see generally soberly understand the reality of the casualties that we're likely to encounter and experience in large-scale combat operations. So, you know, I've yet to have a conversation with a battalion commander, an infantry battalion commander, who thinks that they're going to attack a dug-in, you know, mechanized infantry company with BMP supported with mortars and artillery and maybe even chemical munitions, and doesn't think that they're going to have, you know, the neighborhood of 50 KIA and 150 WIA. And I think battalion commanders understand that. And the battalion and the brigade staff will have done the MDMP and done the course of action analysis, and they'll come to the same conclusion. The gap that I see right now is, and I don't fully understand it, and this is something I'm trying to understand better, is it's as if we plan for that somehow that will cause that to become reality. And we sort of wish away the problem, not because like we don't care about our soldiers, but it's somehow admitting failure. And I think there's a psychological break a little bit that we've got to make here. Like that's the reality of large scale combat. Looking at the casualty numbers from World War II, from Korea, other nations that have experienced, you know, this. I mean, case study, I think the Falklands campaign is a great one, thinking about near peer adversaries. And it's the scale of it is almost intimidating us from just rolling up our sleeves and doing it. And what I found is when we have a good understanding of asset locations and we're making deliberate choices about where we're placing medical capabilities, when we have the graphic control measures with detail about where AXPs are going to be located, where our roll ones are going to be located, where the roll two is going to be, our route, and we get that in the hands of our non-commissioned officers, great things happen. That we have the people, we have the systems and processes to do this, but if we don't have that detail and we don't put it in the hands of our non-commissioned officers, it will not happen. So that's sort of my perspective.
So the other thing is, I think we got to be realistic about backhauling casualties and some of the, like a non-contiguous flight, like an air assault or a lot of the defenses, especially defenses in depth with a lot of obstacles and things like that. So we've got to, it's not so much a matter of getting casualties all the way back to the rear, but where we place the roll one and roll two, because a lot of times we're going to have more, like if we need to get them in an initial lift in an air assault, or we need to position them further forward in like a roll two or a roll one in a defense, because we aren't going to be able to get casualties back, and then that becomes evident that we had a plan that was usable this service.
I think, you know, the other one I saw a lot at National Training Center, and then I've seen here, is, you know, the point of injury to a place I can put somebody on a vehicle. And, you know, I'm a historian too. We're going to have to commit dismounted combat power once we've defeated the enemy, or a unit in a follow support role, to move casualties through complex terrain. It may only be a couple hundred meters, but if we can't get those casualties out of the complex terrain to a place, either I can put them on an ISB or a Humvee or an FLA, that, you know, that gap, that obstacle gap is where we're going to have a high number of casualties that probably are survivable, not survived, especially if we don't have medical capability far forward to stabilize those casualties. Sir, did that answer your question? Oh, I got a hand in the back. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Lieutenant Colonel Damo, also from the Med Center of Excellence. So just to expand on the conversation, I think another mitigation plan is understanding the enablers that are out there that can augment a BSMC and getting at the return to duty rate.
Yeah.
So the more enablers like 2411, we'll have an RFSB, resuscitated surgical detachment, that will augment that BSMC, that will take away a lot of the time and personnel that it takes to get at those type of procedures and allow the BSMC to get at that return to duty rate and reconstitution. I think that's another mitigating factor within that we can utilize those enablers.
And, you know, what you're describing is we can answer those questions in course of action analysis and in wargaming. We just got to do the science of this because, you know, it's human lives, it's human beings, it's our teammates, people we love, but much of this really boils down to a math problem and understanding the math behind volume and flow. I appreciate the comment. Sir, any follow-up?
No, sir, that was sufficient for now. I don't want to take too much time from, this is very good. This is very good, but I don't want to take too much time from this right now.
Hey, appreciate it, sir. Thank you. Thanks for being on. Captain Vaughn from the mighty 1st Infantry Division.
Forged for War and Climb to Glory. And I think I saw Captain Lipe and Major Rich, Wild Boars for Life. Gentlemen, quick question. As we talked about opening it up with war fighting and the division being the tactical unit, now with R-Struck and Transformation and Contact, we're looking at CTCs involving entire SF groups, and we're looking at a minimum division tax and even some division central CTC rotations. Moving forward, what do you think the role of the CTC is to build warfighting, readiness, and lethality at echelon?
Sir, I think you get to answer that one first.
Well, I first of all, you know, we talked at the beginning about having a division construct even for brigade rotations. I think the impetus for the division rotations is, you know, we've done warfighters for years, and although warfighters aren't easy, if you judge by you know, my performance in our warfighter, it definitely was not easy. But it's easy from the standpoint of you don't actually have people doing things. We went out to our cab went out to NTC as part of the 3rd ID's division rotation, and it was some of the best training I've ever seen, because when units actually have to do things, it makes things that should be easy hard, because, for instance, they had to delay their deep attack aviation mission because the BART vehicle, you know, one of the BART vehicles broke down en route, and it couldn't get out to do the BART operations. And those are the things that you see all the time in here. So there's a recognition that all our, if we're really going to be a division-centric Army, all of our formations within the division headquarters need to be able to do operations in the dirt and test themselves in the dirt. Because you know, at JRTC, you know, I always use the expression that no matter where you are, no matter how you come in here, we're going to stretch you to the point that we see your holes. More importantly, you see your holes and could work on fixing them. And that should apply to all the formations that we're counting on in combat, not just for BCT.
Any other comments from the group?
I'll add one, sir. One of the things we're seeing as we expand the roles of the CTCs is the ability to link rotations to provide a better training experience. So with the SF group rotation, we had Red Empire brief the 10th Mountain that immediately followed them on a preparation environment brief. And so we're able to seamlessly integrate what SF was able to do in this pre-stages of the competition and crisis phases with what 10th Mountain was coming into for the conflict phase.
Yeah, I would say the other is the division participation, First Special Forces Command's participation. It raised our game from an operations group. I mean, the amount of stuff I've learned from senior leaders, from subject matter experts, particularly in the space domain, and cyber domain, and the information operations domain, has made us a better division in support of brigades. And I think that's one of the other added benefits of this is you know, just collectively getting stronger and better. Any other comments?
No, I just like to echo, like, it's kind of stealing my thunder for the last, but These division rotations, and so was out there for, I know exactly what you're talking about there at NTC. Those are the ones where we learn the most, I think, from a soft perspective. We learn a lot during the group only rotations, but it's the interaction that we get to have with a real division commander. And then, the corps commander was out there as well. Right. That was so eye-opening for us. And it just reverberates through our formation. The lesson learned we get out of those are priceless.
The last thing in our mission statement, Captain Vaughn, from regulations that dictate what the combat training centers do, it explicitly says that this is supposed to be a Crucible experience. That's not something that we sat around here and came up with. That's something that was given to us by the Chief of Staff of the Army. And so I think, we're at the end of the day, I think we do two things. We're preparing people for the worst day of their life and praying that day never comes. And we're preparing people to do complex problem solving under high stress. And there's no better place to allow people to really develop out their expertise in warfighting, but also to develop them as leaders, to General Curl's comment, to see themselves as a leader, their gaps, to see from other leaders things that work or maybe that they can improve on. Hope that answers it, Captain Vaughn.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, Climate Glory, great to hear from you. First on Tomas.
Thank you, sir, for allowing me to be part of this. I am with the Provost Marshal General's office at HQDA. I have a question, or just maybe want to put it out there for people to think about at these exercises and in LSCO in general. I'm the NCOIC of the Detainee Operations Division, and I know detainee operations is usually not brought into a lot of exercises or thought about. But I'd just like to throw this information out there for everyone to think about. This current RSTRUC has reduced MPs by about 3,000 coming up. With that being said, we're going to need assistance with backhauling, and we just talked about backhauling of casualties. We also have to backhaul detainees. Current U.S. policy is that an interment serial number has to be issued within 14 days of capture, and that's done in the rear at the theater detainment facility. So, and in LSCO, unlike COIN in Iraq and Afghanistan, once you capture somebody, everybody's going back and being held. So, just wanted people to think about that, especially when it comes to backhaul capability. Is what do we have that we usually backhaul on? In the past, it used to be LMTVs, 5 tons, things like that. I believe now logistics supplies everything through PLSs, and if that's the case, I don't think we can backhaul on PLSs. Detainee operations is also going to degrade your logistics, meals, water, things like that. I don't know if people are planning that in your exercises to just throw that in there. For one EPW, you're talking for a full year is 1,068 meals. A detention facility holds 1,000. That's 4.2 million meals just for the detainees, not including what it comes to soldiers.
Hey, First Sergeant, so great comment and question. And, again, I think scale and scope, we can look at Desert Storm and the volume of, EPWs. You can look at the Korean War. You can certainly look at World War II. That's, historical examples of what you're describing exactly, one of the realities of large scale combat operations. What we try not to do here is the 2 or 3 captured soldiers that frankly is a blip for a brigade to solve that problem. And so when we have those events here to stimulate the training environment, we want it to be a real problem, exactly to your point, that the brigade has to think through. So usually it's in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 on one battalion, that now a battalion
that exceeds the ability of a battalion to solve all by itself. It becomes a brigade problem and really stimulate the brigade to ask those questions of the division for everything you described. How are we going to secure? How are we going to safeguard? How are we going to speed to the rear? How are we going to engage from an intelligence collection standpoint? And so when we do that here, and we do it generally a couple times a rotation, we want to do it at a scale that highlights some of the challenges that you brought up there, First Sergeant. Appreciate the comment and dialogue.
Hey, sir, one more thing I want people to think about is that detainee operations is basically a Compo 3 set now. And they won't be on ground for at least 90 to 180 days. So that's going to be something that Compo 1's going to have to deal with, which means they're going to be pulling from their fighting forces or whoever to handle that. So again, just throwing that out there for all these divisions out there that are listening to think about and maybe start trying to brainstorm that.
I appreciate it, First Sergeant. Thank you. All right, CW2, and I'm sorry I don't have my glasses on. Yasero-Alski, I apologize. I totally butchered your name, Chief, from 48th Chemical Brigade. And we're going to talk chemical stuff, I assume, which gets me excited.
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to ask these questions and thank you for hosting this event. In preparation for our upcoming rotation for JRTC 2502, what CBRN threats have been encountered during the rotations? It's kind of a three-part question. What echelon of CBRN elements have been involved in these recent LISCO-focused rotations, and how have they been integrated or utilized in support of the maneuver forces?
Great questions, and we always appreciate people that are doing their intel preparation of the operational environment before coming. And so, hey, keep the dialogue up, and by all means, reach out direct to us, and happy to work with your team coming forward here. So I'm probably best postured to kind of answer that one. So the threat, obviously for a chem battalion coming here is a little different because we want to make sure that you reach all your training objectives. So, it's a different scale. So obviously we're doing reconnaissance, we're doing decontamination as part of it as well. And so, the threat really runs a gambit. So part of what you'll see is enemy stockpiles of chemical munitions that have been abandoned, unexploded ordnance with chemical munitions, and then the use of persistent, non-persistent threats on the battlefield to one, be detected, but then also be decontaminated. And again, think at scale. So as we prepare, for contingencies around the world, Mr. I Hate America, willing and able to use some of these capabilities against us. And then elements, in my tenure here, we've had multiple decon companies, obviously reconnaissance platoons, and then we've done one rotation with 2-4 SBCT, had a chemical battalion came along with them. And then that element was really working for the 21st Airborne Division, not directly for the brigade. It supported the brigade, but it wasn't in direct support of the brigade throughout the rotation. Hope that answered it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks. Look forward to having you down here. Colonel McClellan from MCOE, sir.
Hey, sir. Colonel Hardman, thanks for having me on. Great symposium. Also, thanks to JRTC's support to the fight course in the spring. Forward to seeing your team in October for the next one. My question from a doctrinal perspective, y'all identified the Ranger Handbook as the most important doctrinal publication for units. Definitely agree that basics is extremely important to be successful at a CTC. This shows me that units might not be focusing on that appropriately during the train-ups, but I'm sure you all have seen units that were successful in the basics. Do you have any TTPs that these units use during their train-up that other units could use during their their progressions? Thanks, sir.
Hey, great question. And we love doctrine and always at the top of our reading list. And as much as we love the Ranger Handbook, we've had some great dialogue here on the new FM 3.0. Got to provide some feedback to the new FM 4.0 as well. All right, first, Sergeant. So kind of to you, what are some of the things that you've seen with units of how they've really mastered the fundamentals in their home station training before coming here?
Yeah, Roger, the most successful units are the ones that come in prepared. They're conducting their rehearsals, they're doing their inspections, and ensuring that their soldiers are ready to go. When they come in the FOOM, they understand the movement. They're rehearsing their movements with their squads. When it comes into their battle drill 6 or their squad attack, they're rehearsing those, whether it be on rock drills, whether it be in their COPs. They're consistently rehearsing these battle drills to understand them. They're taking their equipment out into their training areas and exercising their communications equipment to understand their pace plans and what they're going to do if their pace plan fails. So the biggest thing I could say is that those units that prepare themselves for taking their equipment out, rehearsing with their soldiers, are more successful when they get to JRTC. If that answers the question, sir.
Yep.
I'll just dovetail on that. For us, and I'm sure it's the same with everybody, step one is max investment into LTP. Because for us, like, that's what gets people in the mindset, and it helps them begin to understand the problem and understand the environment of what they're walking into. So LTP is number one, max investment. Going back, making the time and an actual training plan to prepare to come to the CTC. And then, since you've been to LTP, you have that understanding of the environment you're going into, prioritizing your rehearsals and doing everything first sergeant said. We can see it on day one.
That's just a good rule in life. Do everything the first sergeant said.
We can see it on day one when the RTU shows up. The ones that took the time to prepare and the ones that kind of had the mentality of we'll figure that out when we get there. The pressure cooker is not where you want to figure things out.
On those points, it's a clear designation of people who have not prepared and not rehearsing, brought the correct equipment to execute their mission versus the ones that haven't done that. So hopefully that's very important.
If I could add, the units that come here and fare better are the ones that aren't doing MDMP and multi-echelon training when they arrive here for execution. So let's start back to the analogy of the white fan showing up at the range. And so at the range, instead of, hey, let's just go down, pick up our TFP, the food for the soldiers, and actually coordinate with the FSC, because you submitted a log staff requesting that food, to have them come over there, and you submitted that via your pace. You actually exercise on your maintenance Monday because you actually set your systems up. And so all those things that are done prior to showing up here to actually test your pace, test your communication, test your systems with all your sister elements before you show up here. Those are the units that fare better.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to standard of discipline in home station training. Not allowing cell phones in the field. I don't want to be one of those guys to say that we were better in the 90s, but we didn't have cell phones. So like when I was a company XO and we were out of range and the ammo didn't show up, you had to get on a tactical communication system and call back to your company CP and ask where the ammo truck was. Things like I mentioned earlier, pulling security in the field all the time, having a logistics plan, training, how you're going to do it, not have the white band show up, having a discipline plan to develop your SOPs and checklists for how you're going to do PCCs, PCIs, how you're going to do MDMP, what train up you're going to do for MDMP, so that you're an expert on the process, so much quickly, and you can skip steps without much knowing the risk that you're incurring and make a detailed, informed decision on that. But it all starts with standards of discipline, having a disciplined process.
All right. So, hey, because I know we got a bunch of current or future company commanders listening out there. This can feel overwhelming, and I don't think you're not there's nothing wrong with you if you kind of look at all the things that the Army's asking you to do and feel somewhat overwhelmed. Or feel like, and I'm going to dork out, it's the Kobayashi Maru, the Star Trek reference of the unsolvable problem. Here's the bottom line is you're not going to be good at everything. It's not possible. So be good at the most important things. And I think it starts, to Joel Curl's comment, with standards and discipline, because everything gets easier when you get consistent results from people. If you say, be in this uniform at this time, and everybody shows up in that uniform at that time, and even better, you show up there and you've got sergeants inspecting people, and you're like, Sergeant, why are you inspecting your fire team? I don't know. That's just what I got taught to do. I thought that's what you expected me to do. If that's the kind of habits our organization has all the time, even better, next level, is when soldiers inspect each other before their team leader shows up, because that's just what they've gotten brought up to do. When you save all this time because you're getting predictable results on very simple things, you find that you have more time to do more difficult things. So I think, and I had a great conversation, did PT, and had a great conversation with some Geronimo company commanders this morning. It starts with predictable results at very basic things. And when that's how the universe kind of works in your company, you're going to find you have more time. Think about some of these things, right? Like, think about, what do we do? We've got a first formation every day for PT. Do we all just show up and line up, or do we have team leaders and squad leaders and platoon sergeants inspecting people? Because if that's our habit, that habit will 100% translate to combat. The next one, and Sergeant Major, you brought it up with 8-step training model and using our doctrine. Like, it works. The 8-step training model works. Like, this is one of these things. I got it. I'm old. You can walk on my grass. The 8-step training model works. And, I hadn't been exposed to the 8-step training model till I had been a lieutenant for like a couple of years, and I had a battalion commander who he did it. He did it all the time. 8 weeks before we'd go out and do something, I was being brought in as a platoon leader and getting trained and certified on the thing that we're going to be doing in 8 weeks. So how are you training and certifying leaders? How is your first sergeant training and certifying leaders? And at what echelon? So if you're a company commander and first sergeant, your echelon to train and certify leaders is staff sergeants or people filling staff sergeant roles. I would not make any assumptions about what people know how to do. It's not because we have people that are dumb. They love America and they want to do awesome stuff for their soldiers. But I don't think that we should assume that a staff sergeant knows how to inspect their squad until the first sergeant has trained and certified him to do it. And I think what you'll find is the bell curve's always in effect. You've got people that have got brought up that way, that got taught that way, that know how to do it. You've got people that kind of know how to do it, but have never really been formally shown how to do it. And then you have people that have never seen it. That will save you time in the long run. I would prioritize, my training. I call it the pyramid of awesomeness. If you're in a company, you can probably establish, hey, we're going to be awesome at these 10 things at the individual level. Noise light discipline, security, dig fighting position, load fire, reduce stoppage on my weapon system, execute the 5 fundamentals of weapon safety, 10 things. Then at the squad level, we're going to be awesome at 6 things. Then at the platoon level, we're going to be awesome at 4 things. And at the company level, we're always going to do issue and order. We're absolutely going to be awesome at establishing security at the company level. And we're going to be really, really good at movement to contact. And so that will, if you get mastery at things, you'll find it becomes easier to master other things, because we built a foundation of how to be really good at something. And so I was super fortunate. I got to do a podcast with Command Sergeant Major retired Donaldson. No, I'm screwing that up. Nash and Donaldson. Background in the 75th Ranger Regiment. How many repetitions does it take to be
awesome at doing squad reactive contact. And they answered the question right. One more. So when we live in a formation where 90% of our training is in the unit area, but every time you come back from a training meeting, you're seeing squads repping out reactive contact because that's the #1 priority battle drill you've given them. I guarantee when they're here and in combat, they're not even going to think about it. They're just going to respond because they've done it so many times. And then 2 last plugs, multi-echelon training. Never miss an opportunity to do whatever you're doing multi-echelon. So if you're doing a squad live fire, then the platoon leader should be really receiving reports from the squad and then providing reports, salute report in accordance with the pace to the company command post that's tracking that information. When we do business that way, we'll get better at a lot of things faster. And then the last one is it's dark out there, but we got to put our NVGs on our face and we got to do this stuff at night. We got to stop rent the night. We got to own the night. And that means that maybe we schedule our foot march instead of doing it on a road under lights. We're going to pick a route through complex terrain and we're going to do it under night vision goggles. And, you know, it is that will make a huge difference for our formations. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I'm sorry. That just like motivated me to no end. All right, and then I got to go here. I think we got time for like 2 more questions. First, our Barber, Connecticut Army National Guard. Awesome to have you on the net, and stand by for your question for the team. I feel no opening shot. First Sergeant, we'll be standing by for you. Sergeant First Class Jackson from the Capability Development Integration Directorate.
Previous Alpha 70 November out there at JRTC is the medevac OC. I just had a question. We just left the MASCAL LOE that was at the Maneuver Center of Excellence, hosted by retired Brigadier General Jones last week. And, you know, for the capability development realm and delivering an Army of 2040, one of our focuses, you know, our 3 main things that we're looking at is, you know, to help unencumber the maneuver forces is clearing the battlefield, return to duty at echelon, and then overcoming contested logistics, and in our realm, the medical logistics aspect, right? But I want to kind of ask about the return to duty. So in my tenure there at Polk, we talked a lot about DITA wounds and KIA, right? And so those DITA wounds are, you know, kind of calculated based on the casualties and or patients reaching in our case, the BSMC, right? Reaching that role 2. So I'm just kind of curious on the appetite on looking at more of an evaluation criteria on, you know, returning folks to duty as early as possible throughout that continuum of care, whether it's at the CCP, the role 1, the role 2, and enabling those leaders at echelon to make those decisions so we can get folks back in the fight, right? So something that is a priority that, you know, constitutes an aircraft or a ground ambulance coming, getting you in within 6 hours or 24 hours based on the precedent. Maybe that folk, you know, or those subset of folks in the next fight, we're going to have to sit on them for a while. And hey, you can still pull a trigger and you can still, you know, help out in some way, shape, or form. You know, what's your thoughts, sir, on looking at a metric on you know, enabling leaders at the lowest level to triage appropriately and keep folks in the fight for a longer period of time? I'll copy over.
Hey, great question. Appreciate it. I'll open it up for the group first. I'll kind of give you my perspective. Master Robinson.
Yeah, great question. Master Robinson here. So speaking for the role 2 specifically, we've seen a really good increase in this in the last year or 2 with the role 2s triaging and then using those RTD personnel as extra hands essentially in that BSA cluster environment. So we've seen people waiting in patient hold, but they're, you know, a routine or a convenience priority patient being able to pick up a weapon and help man in a fighting position, being able to help triage during a MASCAL environment. And so I know from the role 2 down to the role 1 level, really pushing that, we're trying to coach them that, you know, we may not have the same convenience that we've had the last 20 years moving forward when it comes to evacuating patients. So it's really important that we use them as much as we can. Does that answer your question? So.
Roger, that's good. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Great question. And I think, this is evolution of the way we manage casualties, it has changed, updated casualty cards and going forward. And I think this is one of those things we continue to refine and get better going forward. Sir?
Yeah, so if we have a mass casualty event, a roll 1 is how many beds? 2 or 3, and a roll 2 is how many beds?
20.
20. So if we're talking like, a couple hundred casualties, we've far exceeded that. So we've got to use those for just our top priority casualties and our most urgent casualties. So I think it's incumbent upon all of our formations to have as much capability far forward, and not just with our 68 whiskeys, but with all of our soldiers, because our ability to casualties with all of our personnel at all levels becomes that much more important. So investing time, and we've listed about 750 training days per year that you need to do to get ready for your JRTC rotation in combat, but really investing in your medical training of all personnel so that we have that capability. It's the only way, I think, in this environment that we're going to be able to keep up with the amount of casualties.
Okay, Major Perkins, you got the last question.
All right, thank you. Major Perkins, I'm the MICO commander, 4th SVAB. So we're aligned to UCOM, do a lot of rotations over there. I can't really imagine a battlefield that we are not going to be sharing it with partners or allies in the near future. So something, just an observation I've noticed, is we have a reluctance and sometimes a hesitation to share and work alongside allies and partners. Is there a collective shift to try to help amend that? We're very comfortable working at
Great question. So here's the first one. I don't think I could probably count on one hand the number of rotations that we've done here that we haven't had an allied or partner. We've changed in the last 6 months. We've designated one of the brigades within the 21st Airborne Division is one of the host nation brigades, whether it's South Thorbian or Arnish Brigade, for that very reason, and in part because of the participation we've had with reoccurring participation from SVABs. And so we're trying to build that multinational component into doing what we do here, more routinely going forward. Absolutely, we're going to fight joint and we're going to fight multinational. I guess the last one I would give to is, going forward, we've got a rotation with one of our partners from the Middle East that will have a battalion here on the ground, but then we'll also have their brigade fighting distributed in lieu of with the 21st Airborne Division as an adjacent brigade in the dirt to the brigade here. So, this is an area where we got to all continue to improve as an Army. But I think from a CTC perspective, we're all in and moving in that direction.
Absolutely, sir. And then I guess the one thing I observed was optics. We're very comfortable on SIPR, moving over to other networks and partners and allies, just sharing with them. And we definitely have a different rapport with our 5I versus our allies versus our even NATO partners or NATO allies.
Yep.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Hey, appreciate it. Okay, so any closing comments down the line? No, sir.
Sure. Hey, thanks for everyone's participation in here. Thanks for the panel here. Great discussion, great comments from everyone, and great questions from all the outstations and from the people in the room here. That's how we get better as an Army, and it's going to require all of our discussions at all levels, within your platoon, within your companies, within your COEs, within each of our task forces, so that we all keep having these discussions and talk about the ways to get better. Because we mentioned a bunch of things. I used to always joke when I was the COG that we would start to have comments like, all they got to do is synchronize 6 warfighting functions in time and space while in contact with the enemy, getting very little sleep while on the move. And I don't understand why they haven't done that. What we do here, what units do here, whether it's SOF, Aviation, the VCT, CSSB, is very, very difficult. And synchronizing this stuff is very, very difficult. And some units come in higher than other units. Some units do, you might have all of your AAR comments from one rotation. The next rotation does all of those things perfectly. But then, we'll start to, raise our game in terms of the things that we're talking about and the things that we talk to them about needing to improve. Because you can never feel like you're at the finish line, that you've achieved success, that you are doing it perfectly, because we all like the comment about how many react to squad ambush or squad contact battle drills do you need to do? One more. How many things do you need to fix in your formation? It's always one more. And so we can never be satisfied. We've always got to keep, and discussions like this will help us get better, and training events will help getting us better. If we do it perfectly, we need to raise the stakes, raise the complexity to help our formations.
Yes, sir. Hey, so up front, I'd really like to thank everybody that put this together. So great work by the team. But none of it would matter without having everybody from our Army that's on the net, and also our awesome allies and partners. That's one of the things about this job I've really appreciated is the engagement I've gotten to have with our allies and partners as they work through solving a bunch of these problems for their countries and their armies. And so thanks for your team play with us and the relationship that you have with us. Incredibly grateful. What General Ferguson, kind of left off that we're at a moment of generational change. And I got to tell you, it makes me even more grateful to have gotten to be here at JRTC for the last 2 years. It makes me grateful. And so, for those out there in the force, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to change our Army, to increase the likelihood that if we have to fight, that we win. And we not only win, but we win decisively. And ultimately, all that change and growth makes it less likely that we'll have to fight a war. That's ultimately where deterrence comes from, is all of us and our ability to be experts at what we do, so that, somebody that wishes our way of life ill wakes up in the morning and says, yeah, today's not the day. And so, I think attacking the challenges that we have in front with optimism is absolutely where it's got to be. CG talked about it. What I would say is relentless pursuit of excellence in the things that are in your control. The number one counter UAS system is noise light, EMS discipline, dispersion, and digging a fighting position. And that's agnostic of, everybody can do that in the Army. That's agnostic of any MOS or type of formation. And it matters. We see that here time and time again, that people that master the fundamentals are really hard to kill. And people that are really hard to kill get more opportunities to kill the enemy first. And, ultimately, I think much of this is in our control, and we have to stop. The equipment's going to come. The great ideas from headquarters Department of the Army, they're coming. But I would argue, with transformation and contact, much of this is on us to grab the rucksack, throw it on our back, and get after it. And then, finally, being here, this is humbling. This environment's humbling. One, I get to be with experts every single day. And so if you're looking to come be a warfighter, this is an amazing place to not only give back to the Army, but an amazing place to grow as a warfighter. I'm on my 38th rotation as an OCT, and I'm learning something every single rotation here. and I'm going to miss it when I'm gone. And I'm absolutely better as a leader and as a warfighter for the opportunity. So thanks for joining us. Look forward to continued dialogue. Reach out to us, write, get your ideas on paper and share it with the Army, or reach out and come join us here on the Crucible podcast going forward. Thanks for what you do all the way.
Thank you for joining us on The Crucible, the JRTC Experience.
The Joint Readiness Training Center is the premier Crucible training experience. We prepare units to fight and win in the most complex environments against world-class opposing forces. We are America's leadership laboratory. Again, we'd like to thank our guests for participating. This podcast was created and produced by Mr. John Mabes. Executive producer is Lieutenant Colonel Drew Zabriskie. It was recorded by Captain Jermaine Branch and edited by Mr. Travis Boyle. Series intros were built by Chief Thomas Rich and vocals were done by Mr. Robert Chopper. Special thanks to Mr. Jeff England and the Fort Johnson Public Affairs Office. Be sure to like and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest warfighting TTPs learned through the crucible that is the Joint Readiness Training Center. Follow us by going to https://linktr.ee/JRTC. We'd like to thank our partners at the Center for Army Lessons Learned of the Combined Arms Center, especially the JRTC COL Observations Detachment. Be sure to follow them on social media as well. Follow them at https://www.army.mil/CALL. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review us wherever you listen or watch your podcasts, and be sure to stay tuned for more in the near future. The Crucible, the JRTC Experience, is a product of the Joint Readiness Training Center.